Hey, Aaron Rabinowitz here for RedGiantTV.com. In part 1 of this tutorial, Mathias Möhl showed us how to turn a parking lot into an airport. In part 2, he'll show us how to turn $100 into $14 million by placing small ads in your local paper. Wait, that can't be right. Oh, I'm reading from my spam folder. Sorry about that. Okay, in this tutorial, Mathias will show us how to track footage using Mocha AE, which ships with After Effects CS4 and is available as a standalone app for older versions as well. After that, he'll show us how to import the data and how to use it with Red Giant Warp and his awesome script, MochaImport, to get a really solid composite. Seriously, when you see this script in action, you'll be amazed at what you can do. Finally, he'll do some recoloring of the shot with Magic Bullet looks to help create a different mood. So with that said, I'll hand you back to Mathias.
Hello, welcome back to the second part of my tutorial. So in the first part, we already created here this nice airport scene with this airplane here. And on the second part, we are going to address how to compose this car here on top of the entire scene. And for this, we will use a new, really cool rotoscoping technique that is based on my After Effects script MochaImport. And to show you the general idea of this, I want to first show you some short clip that explains the central idea of this script. Mocha is a planar tracker. This means that it can analyze the movement of any plane surface within your scene. Even if you track something that is not a plane, as for example this head here, Mocha generates a plane that moves accordingly. With my free script MochaImport, you can use this technology in a completely new way. With just one click, you can change your point of view and jump right into the tracked plane. Here you can do any kinds of modifications, and once you're done, go back to your original perspective. If you do that, all changes are automatically transferred back to the original perspective. This way, you can do any kinds of manipulations in a stabilized setting and let Mocha take care of all the movement and perspective distortion. The technique can also be used for rotoscoping. This mat, for example, was created with just one keyframe. All movement is automatically obtained from the movement of the tracked plane. The MochaImport script can either be used without any additional plugin or in combination with Red Giant Warp. Whether you need the Red Giant Warp functions or not depends on the kind of footage that you have. As long as your plane is just moving, scaling or rotating, you don't need the Red Giant Warp functions. But as soon as there's also a change in perspective, with Red Giant Warp you will get much better results. Let's take a look at an example here. In this shot, some change in perspective is going on. If we use MochaImport without the Red Giant Warp functions, the car is nicely stabilized, but the perspective distortion is not compensated, as you can see by the movement of the grid. In contrast to that, with Red Giant Warp, your shot is not just stabilized, but also undistorted to eliminate any changes in perspective. Note that the grid is now perfectly fixed. By that, the shape of the car stays fixed over the entire shot. Without Red Giant Warp, this is not the case. The difference is in particular visible if you look at both results at the same time. So I hope this short clip gave you a brief idea of what the MochaImport script is about. And so we are going to use it now to rotoscope the car of our clip. And so we are going to use Mocha together with the Red Giant Warp plugin. And the first step that we have to do is to track our car in Mocha. And the version of Mocha that we are going to use is Mocha for After Effects version 1. So that's the version that ships together with After Effects CS4. So here we are inside Mocha, and now we start a new project and select here as clip to import our video. Again, we select here the first frame and hit OK. Let's call this here car track and make sure that here everything is correct. Make sure that we select 25 frames per second, which is the frame rate of this clip, and hit finish. So now we've got here our clip in Mocha, and we can scroll around here to take a look at it. And you can see that at the end there is no movement anymore, and the movement starts around here. Here is some last movement, so we go behind the last movement and now draw a really rough mask with this X-spline tool here. Or first we can select this here to zoom in a little bit, and then with this X-spline tool we can draw a really rough mask around our car. Really doesn't need to be precise. Right click to finish. And then we, here in motion, we want to track this translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective. And now hit this button here to track backwards. You see at the beginning almost nothing happens. And now the movement of the car is tracked. So I will skip ahead in time. And now our track is done, and now we can view our track if we hit here this play button. This looks like a quite solid track. So as I mentioned before, we do this tracking in order to isolate the car from the background, and actually in Mocha version 2, Mocha for After Effects, and together with the shape plugin, you are able to export here these shapes that you have drawn in Mocha itself and use them in After Effects. But this time I show you how you can do something similar, let's say, just with the version of Mocha that ships with After Effects CS4, which is Mocha for After Effects version 1, and in combination with my MochaImport script and with the Red Giant Warp plugin. And what you have to do for this is to export a corner pin track. So we have to set the surface, click here on this surface button, and we select here this one. We make it such big that it contains here some area around the car, approximately the area that we are interested in later. I make it on purpose a little bit bigger because we also want to maintain some part of the area here below the car into our composition later. So like this maybe. And now to check how our track went, we can also enable here this grid and see if we hit play here backwards, you can see how our track moves. And what you can see here already is that quite some perspective movement is going on. Okay, you see how this grid here changes in perspective, and this means if you track only translation, scale, and rotation, you won't get all the info you need to really get a good track. So we go to export tracking data, and I'm going to show you the difference. So we first store corner pin, save, and just call it car track corner pin. And then we also will store, just to compare it, here's a transform data, which just represents here's the translation, scale, and rotation info, and saves this in as car track transform data. Okay, now we go back to After Effects, and in After Effects, so we go here, or we select here our footage that we imported before and drag it onto this symbol to get a new comp with our footage, looking now like this. And we now want to import this data, and we import it with my script MochaImport. So you go to Window and select there MochaImport. So you can see some other tutorials of mine on my website to explain the basic usage of it, so I will go into the details of how to install the script and how to use it, but just use it in this particular for the things I need now. So I drag it wherever I like here into my interface and select here load data from text file, and I select here the car track transform data to show you what you can do with it. So what I want to do is I want to pre-compose stabilize the selected layer, and this is an option that I think most people like best on the script. And so pre-compose stabilize layer, select this layer with this car here and hit apply. And what it does, it creates a pre-comp where this car here is stabilized, and the idea is if it's stabilized, we can rotoscope it much easier. So draw a mask around it. Hit apply, let it work for some while, and jump here into the pre-comp. And you can see that in this pre-comp, well, it is fairly good stabilized, but there's still some movement and perspective distortion going on. So let's create a new solid and call this matte, because we now want to create a matte and make it invisible, and add some mask to this matte layer, just very roughly. I mean, this should be more precise, but I'm going to show you a better method later anyway. So here at the bottom we're not so interested in it, and we can feather it out later, so don't bother. Okay, and if you now look at how this behaves over time, you see that it fairly well moves with the thing we tracked, but there is still a lot of rotoscoping that you have to do to get the matte tightly around the car, because this stabilize cannot handle the perspective distortion that is going on. And so I'm going to start here with another technique. I again drag my original footage here onto this symbol to get a new comp with our original material, looking here like this. And now with my MochaImport script, I load from a text file the corner pin data, which also contains the perspective distortion information, and now select this red giant warp pre-comp selected layer, which does basically the same as this pre-comp stabilize, but with the help of this red giant warp also undistorts. So I select this one here and hit apply. This takes now a while, and now we've got here a corner pin that follows our car as we tracked it, and we can again go here to the project and drag in the original footage below, and you can see it perfectly matches the original comp. And the only difference is here we can now jump in and have now a perfectly stabilized and undistorted version of our car. So I do a quick RAM preview, and now you can see that the car is fairly good stabilized and that it's really easy now to do the rotoscoping in this setting. So now we do the same thing that we did before with this stabilized pre-comp. We create here a new solid that serves as a matte. We make it invisible and draw a mask on this matte around our car. Let's just make a little bit more space here. So we just draw a mask. Again, if I hit space, I can move the points. So this rotoscoping is a work that I usually had to do for a lot of frames, and now due to this stabilization it becomes much easier. So in the bottom area it's not so important because there we don't have any matte painting. So it's just important that here in this area, the upper part of the shape, everything is correct, like this. And now you can see if we animate this over time, the mask pretty well fits the shape of our car. And we add a second mask, or we can feather this mask here a little bit, like 1 pixel, and then we can add a second mask for the bottom area to include here parts of the bottom around, maybe like this. And this one we can, so this here is hit return car mask, and this here is the, and this one we can then feather much more. So mask feather, let's enable here the layers such that we can see what we do. This is our car mask, this is bottom mask, and this one can be feathered more heavily. We can modify it a little here such that it nicely blends together like this. Okay, now we got our rotoscope shape of the car with just 1 keyframe due to this stabilization. And what we also do here is that we enable the motion blur for this matte layer. And the idea here is that then we get not visible here, but into here the comp where we with our footage, if we enable motion blur, we automatically get also the motion blur. If we enable it here, see, we get motion blur for our shape. So what do we want with this white shape? Well, we just want to activate this one here and select for the layer below the track matte, alpha matte, luma matte of this layer above. And go back to this original comp and deactivate here this background layer such that we only have this white part. And if we now go back here, you can see we've got a comp that just contains the car with some surrounding area. So now that we have this car isolated, we can go, or let's first clean up a little and call this composition then car isolated, and drag this car here into a new composition and call this final composite, and also drag in here our painting composition behind the car. And now we've got the car overlapping nicely or blending nicely into our painting. And then a last thing we can do here is to identify other parts of the footage that we want to maintain except for the car. So there are, for example, here these elements that are moving in the original video and that are of course not moving into the still matte painting that we did. So what I do to preserve them is that I again select here our original footage, drag a copy in on top, call it moving stuff, and just draw some mask around it that we just preserve this part here that is moving, and the rest in the remaining area, again, the painting is visible like this. So now if we do a RAM preview, you can see that here we've got our original moving parts, whereas here the painting is shown. So to speed things up a little, I've now created here for our final composite comp a proxy, and now we drag this composition into a new one again that we now call final look, and where we apply the final look with the help of Magic Bullet looks. And we do this by creating a new adjustment layer and look, and on this look we apply the effect Magic Bullet looks. And now we can click here on edit to set our look. Okay, now here we are in Magic Bullet looks, and you can see here our footage, and what we start with is an appropriate preset, and you've got a lot of different presets here in Magic Bullet is a lot of different categories, and we choose out of the popular film category, I think the frequently used one called Blockbuster. And here you can see now what the Blockbuster looks does with our footage. Here, if I click on this red rectangle here, I can turn the entire look on and off to see the difference. And I think it already looks quite good, but it has some problems. Namely, for example, that here the sky is completely blown out. And a nice thing about Magic Bullet is that it basically simulates the entire process of what happens to your images in reality. So it starts here with the subject, and then some mattes that might be placed in front of the camera, and then what happens within the lens and within the camera itself and in the post. And if you think about what you had done if you had filmed this here like that and had the problem that the sky would have been blown out, you would probably have put some kind of gradient in front of your lens, so here in your matte, at the matte, and to make the sky a little darker. And this is exactly what we can do now also in post. So we go here to our tools, go to the matte section and choose here a gradient and drag it onto our footage, and now we virtually place a gradient filter here in front of our camera. And you see that immediately it brings back some details on the sky, but currently the gradient is colored, so this is something we don't want. It should just be a gray gradient, so we move the color here back to a neutral color, and it should also be a little darker, maybe like this, and you can see that now the details are coming back. And one other problem that we have is that now the entire image gets darker because the gradient goes over the entire image, so we can adjust this here and let the gradient only act on this area here, on the sky area that we're interested in. And now in what way this changes from darkening to not darkening here in the bottom can be then controlled with this fall off here. So you can see if I change that, the gradient changes accordingly. So I think with this setting, for example, we don't make here the building too dark and nevertheless bring enough of this sky details here back. So another thing that I don't like about the preset is that here the vignette is quite visible. So I reduce this a little, go here to the vignette and just reduce its strength to maybe something around 50% to make it a little bit more subtle. You can turn on and off each effect separately to see what, for example, in this case, this vignette effect does. So I think this is now good enough for our look, so I hit OK to apply it. Okay, and if we now switch back here to our composition, we can see our final result. And one thing that I always like about applying the look to an adjustment layer is that with the opacity setting of the layer, you can then dial in the strength of your look. So if you set the opacity to 0, your look is basically gone, and if you increase it, your look comes back. And so you can also say, well, maybe this is a little bit too much, and you just want the look to have an intensity of like 85% or something. So this is up to you, but it's handy to be able to change this afterwards. I think in this case 100% is okay. So this here is our final result. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Have a good day.
A good day indeed. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you want to learn more about Mathias Möhl, check out his blog at aeextensions.blogspot.com, where you can find descriptions and tutorials for all of his scripts. And you can find and download those scripts at aescripts.com, a great site that recently relaunched to become a one-stop destination to get some of the best After Effects scripts from some of the best AE script writers around the globe. Now, they have an interesting setup. You can download or buy MochaImport and many other scripts there, but the way that it works is that it's all on a suggested donation price of $10 per script. Really, it's pay what you want to pay, but honestly, for the amount of time and money that their stuff will save you in your work, it should probably cost a lot more. Seriously, it's worth dropping a few bucks to keep great products like this coming, and I hope that you do. Anyway, if you want to explore enhancing your footage with Magic Bullet looks or using Red Giant Warp for better tracking results, you can download a trial version of both at redgiantsoftware.com. And just for watching this tutorial, we're going to give you a discount on Magic Bullet looks and Red Giant Warp. Go to redgiantsoftware.com/promos to get this and other special Red Giant TV deals. Now, these are time-sensitive discounts. They won't last forever. All coupon codes expire 7 days from the launch date of each tutorial. So again, go to redgiantsoftware.com/promos to get the coupon codes for the most current Red Giant TV deals. Once again, I'm Alan Rabinowitz for redgianttv.com. See you next time.